In the far reaches of the galaxy, countless intelligent species existed, each living in their own corner of the stars. They built great cities floating in space, created music that could be heard through light waves, and discovered peace that lasted for centuries. Yet among all these civilizations, there was one name that spread fear like a shadow: humans. Every race that had heard of them used the same word to describe their origin world: Deathworld. Earth was known as a planet of endless storms, wild oceans, and violent creatures. Its gravity was heavy, its weather unpredictable, and its nature unforgiving. To the gentle species of the galaxy, who lived on calm, soft planets, it was unbelievable that any intelligent life could survive there. And yet humanity did not only survive, they thrived. They conquered hunger, diseases, and wars. They turned danger into strength. But with that strength came reputation. Stories spread across space about what humans could do when pushed to the edge. They could fight until their last breath. They could rebuild after total destruction. They could love fiercely but also rage with unmatched fury. Alien scholars recorded human history and called them both heroes and monsters. Some said humans were too emotional, too unpredictable. Others whispered that humanity's kindness was only a trick, a mask hiding a brutal past. The galaxy gave them a name that would never fade: the Deathworlders. Many alien governments banned human contact. They told their citizens that humans were violent and untrustworthy. Never let them near your planets, they warned. They come from a world that kills everything soft, and so humans became both feared and isolated. But the truth was far more complex than the stories told. Among humanity, there were explorers who refused to accept this reputation. They wanted to prove that humans were not monsters but protectors. These were the brave men and women who joined the Interstellar Rescue Division, a group created not for war, but for saving lives. They were trained to go where no one else dared to go, to enter disaster zones and hostile environments. They were known as Eidolon units, named after ghosts, because they often appeared out of nowhere to help and then vanished again into space. Captain Rhea Morgan was one of them. She had been born in the ruins of old Earth, in a city rebuilt after a massive storm had destroyed everything. As a child, she had seen humans helping each other when the world was falling apart. That image stayed with her forever. She believed that being a Deathworlder was not a curse. It was proof that humanity could survive anything and still choose compassion. Her ship, Eidolon 9, was small, but strong. It was built for danger zones, equipped with shields that could resist radiation and engines that could fly through storms. Her crew was made of 5 people: Lieutenant Ashar Patel, the engineer who could fix anything; Dr. Nia Flores, a medical officer who treated alien species better than anyone; Pilot Jonas Reed, a calm man with fast reflexes; Communications Officer Lyle Trenton, who could understand 50 alien languages; and Captain Rhea, whose voice alone could calm chaos. Together they traveled through forgotten regions of space, searching for distress signals. Everywhere they went, people looked at them with a mix of awe and fear. On some planets, they were treated like saviors. On others, like dangerous beasts. There were times when they arrived to help but were forced to wait outside orbit because the local rulers didn't want Deathworlders touching their soil. It broke Rhea's heart, but she never argued. She would say, "One day they'll see who we truly are. Not because we tell them, but because we show them." Life aboard Eidolon 9 was never peaceful. The crew lived in constant motion. They would wake up to alarms, repair their ship in freezing temperatures, and sometimes go days without sleep. But through it all, they carried a strange kind of warmth, a hope that their actions meant something. They didn't want fame. They wanted understanding. One night, as they drifted near a nebula that glowed blue like an ocean wave, Rhea sat quietly in the control room. The galaxy stretched before her, endless and cold. She looked at Earth's coordinates blinking softly on the navigation map, far behind them. "They call us monsters," she whispered, half to herself. "But monsters don't answer calls for help." Ashar entered with 2 cups of coffee, setting one beside her. "You know why they fear us," he said. "We come from a place that tried to kill us every single day. And we adapted. That scares them." Rhea smiled faintly. "Then maybe one day they'll learn that the same strength that helps us survive can also help them live." Unseen by them, in the dark corners of the galaxy, hundreds of alien transmissions continued to spread false tales. Some said humans could tear metal with their hands. Others said they fed on fear itself. No one wanted to know the truth. They preferred the stories, the legends that made them feel safe behind walls of misunderstanding. But Rhea and her crew did not live behind walls. They went out into the unknown every day. They helped shipwrecked miners, rescued families from collapsing colonies, and delivered food to planets suffering famine. Sometimes they would receive nothing in return. No thanks, no recognition, only silence. Yet they never stopped, because deep down, they knew that courage was not about being accepted. It was about doing what was right even when no one believed in you. Once, while repairing a broken shuttle in orbit, Dr. Nia asked Rhea, "Do you ever think we'll change their minds?" Rhea thought for a long time before answering. Maybe not all of them, maybe only one or two, but that's enough, because when one person sees the truth, they tell another, and that's how change begins. Those words became the silent mission of Eidolon 9, not just to save lives, but to show what humanity truly meant. They didn't fight battles with weapons. They fought battles with kindness, with endurance, with self-sacrifice. Every rescue they completed was another small step toward changing the galaxy's mind, and yet, despite all their efforts, fear remained strong. To many, the word Deathworlder still meant something dark and terrifying. No matter what humans did, their reputation followed them like a shadow. They were the species from the world of storms, born from chaos and pain. Still, that did not stop Captain Rhea. She believed that one act of courage could erase 1,000 lies. She believed that when the galaxy finally saw humanity's true heart, the name Deathworlder would no longer mean fear, it would mean hope. She did not know it then, but the moment that would test this belief was already approaching. Somewhere beyond the nebula, on a distant planet full of life, something terrible was happening. A desperate signal was traveling through space, bouncing off satellites, crossing voids of darkness. It carried only 3 words: "Please help us." And when that signal reached Eidolon 9, the crew would face a choice that would define them forever. Because soon they would be called to a place where they were feared the most and prove what being human truly meant. It was an ordinary day aboard Eidolon 9. The crew had just finished a long rescue mission near a mining station when the engines were finally quiet, and the hum of the ship filled the silence. Rhea sat in her chair, looking at the stars outside the window. They seemed calm, distant, and endless. For once, everything was peaceful. But peace never lasted long for a Deathworlder crew. Suddenly, a sharp beep echoed from the communications console. Lyle looked up in surprise. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal," he said, his fingers dancing over the glowing controls. The signal was weak, full of static, like a whisper coming from deep space. Rhea leaned forward. "Where's it coming from?" she asked. Lyle frowned. "Coordinates. Way beyond our patrol zone. Looks like Threxian territory." The name hung heavy in the air. Everyone in the room went quiet. The Threxians were one of the most advanced alien civilizations in the galaxy, and one of the most fearful of humans. They had made it clear many times that no human ship was allowed near their worlds. Their leaders had called humans unpredictable, violent, and dangerous. Once, a Threxian diplomat even said that letting humans near their colonies would be inviting a storm into a garden. Ashar looked up from his console. "Could be a trap," he said carefully. "They hate us, remember?" Rhea didn't answer immediately. She stared at the flickering signal on the screen. The message kept repeating, breaking through bursts of static. "Help, please. We're dying!" Her eyes softened. "That doesn't sound like a trap," she said quietly. "That sounds like desperation." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Dr. Nia adjusted her headset, trying to clear the message. If it really is a Threxian distress call, then something terrible is happening. Their communication tech is top tier. If it's breaking like this, their systems are probably collapsing. Rhea stood up. "Plot the course," she ordered. Jonas hesitated. "Captain, if we go there, we'll be breaking 12 interstellar laws. The Threxian government will call it invasion." Rhea looked around at her crew, her voice steady but firm. "Someone out there is asking for help. Maybe they fear us. Maybe they hate us. But if we don't go, we become the monsters they think we are." No one argued after that. Jonas sighed, nodded, and entered the coordinates. The ship's engines rumbled to life. Stars stretched into lines as Eidolon 9 jumped into faster-than-light travel. The journey took hours, but the tension inside the ship made it feel longer. Ashar monitored the engine's heat levels while Nia prepared medical kits. Lyle worked to decode more of the message, but the words were fading. All he could make out were fragments. Infection. Spreading fast. We can't breathe. It sounds like a biological disaster, Nia muttered, her brow furrowing. Maybe a virus or toxin. Threxians are proud, Ashar said. They'd rather die than ask humans for help. If they're sending an SOS, things must be truly bad. Rhea listened quietly. She knew he was right. Threxians rarely communicated with humans. The last official meeting between the two species had ended in shouting and accusations. Yet now, in their darkest hour, they had sent a message that crossed light years, hoping anyone would listen. Hours later, Eidolon 9 dropped out of hyperspace. The moment they arrived, the entire crew gasped. Before them hung the Threxian world, a massive green-blue planet covered in clouds and strange metallic structures. But it was dying. Great columns of smoke rose from the surface, and several of their orbiting stations were dark. Sensors showed chaos below. Collapsing energy grids, failing life support systems, and thousands of distress beacons screaming for attention. Lyle's screen blinked red. "Incoming transmission," he said. "It's the Threxian command." A holographic figure appeared on the bridge, a tall, silver-skinned alien with glowing blue eyes and long facial ridges. His voice was cold and sharp. "Human vessel, you are in restricted space. Turn back immediately." Rhea stepped forward. "This is Captain Rhea Morgan of the human rescue ship Eidolon 9. We received a distress signal. Your people are dying. We're here to help." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Your kind brings only destruction. We do not need your help." Ashar clenched his fists, but Rhea raised a hand, keeping him calm. "Then why did someone on your planet send an SOS? Someone down there wants to live. Are you going to deny them because of pride?" For a moment there was silence. The alien's expression shifted slightly. "The signal? It was not authorized," he said stiffly. "Our atmosphere is collapsing. A containment breach in the oxygen towers. We have already lost millions. But if you land, our people will panic." "Then panic," Rhea said firmly. "But we're coming." Before the Threxian commander could respond, Rhea cut the transmission. She turned to Jonas. "Take us down." The ship entered the atmosphere, shaking violently as it passed through layers of dust and ash. The sky below was a nightmare. Dark green clouds swirling with lightning, cities burning beneath them. Towers that once shone with energy now stood broken and silent. The moment they landed, the crew could see the horror firsthand. The air shimmered with toxins, and bodies of Threxians lay scattered across the metallic streets. The few who were still alive were gasping, struggling to breathe. Dr. Nia immediately activated her scanner. "The air's saturated with sulfur dioxide and carbon compounds. It's lethal to them. They can't survive another hour." Rhea ordered the team to put on sealed suits. "We'll set up air generators," she said. "We'll give them oxygen. Move fast." As they worked, a group of Threxian soldiers appeared, their weapons raised. They shouted warnings in their own language, telling the humans to stay away. Lyle quickly stepped forward, translating through his comm device. "They think we're here to steal their tech," he said. Rhea held up her hands. "Tell them this, we didn't come to take anything. We came because they asked for help." The soldiers hesitated, their glowing eyes flickering with confusion. Behind them, a Threxian mother stumbled out of a doorway, holding a child who was barely breathing. Without thinking, Rhea rushed to her, ignoring the soldiers' shouts. She opened her oxygen pack, placed the mask on the child's face, and gently rubbed his back until he started breathing again. The soldiers fell silent, watching in disbelief. Dr. Nia knelt beside Rhea, checking the child's pulse. "He's stable," she said softly. "But there are thousands more like him." Word began to spread through the city that the humans had landed, not to conquer, but to save. Some Threxians still hid, watching from the shadows. Others slowly came forward, their faces filled with fear and hope. They had heard stories all their lives about the violent Deathworlders who destroyed everything they touched. But what they saw before them was different. These humans were sweating, coughing, risking their lives in poisoned air just to keep strangers alive. As night fell, Rhea and her crew kept working under dim lights. They repaired oxygen pumps, cleared blocked tunnels, and carried the weak to safer areas. Even when their suits' filters began to fail, they refused to stop. At one point, Rhea's communication link picked up a faint voice. It was the same Threxian commander who had told them to leave. "Captain Morgan," he said quietly, his tone changed. You disobeyed our warnings. You entered our world despite our hatred. Why? Rhea wiped the dust from her visor. Because someone called for help, she said. That's all the reason we need. The commander didn't reply right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. We have misjudged you, Deathworlder. Perhaps your world made you strong but not cruel. Maybe strength and mercy can exist together. Rhea looked around at her crew, still working tirelessly. They always have, she whispered. As dawn broke, the smoke above the city began to clear a little. The Threxians, once full of fear, now stood beside the humans, helping them move supplies. Barriers of centuries-old prejudice were breaking down, not through speeches, but through actions. The message that had once been a cry of despair was now something more, a bridge between species that had never trusted each other. And for the first time, the Threxians began to understand that the Deathworlders were not the monsters of legend. They were something else entirely. They were beings who carried both fire and heart, and though the danger was far from over, that single act of answering the SOS had changed everything. It was no longer a story about fear. It was becoming a story about courage, sacrifice, and the strength to do what is right, even when the galaxy refuses to see your worth. When Eidolon 9 landed on the ruined Threxian world, the sky looked like it was bleeding. Clouds glowed orange and green, flashing with lightning that never stopped. The air burned like acid and the surface trembled from deep underground explosions. The humans had only been there for a few hours, but it already felt like they had been walking through hell for days. Still, they didn't stop. Rhea led from the front, her voice steady, her face hidden behind the glass of her helmet. Everywhere they went, the Threxians stared in silence. Some were too weak to move, others were too afraid to come close. They had grown up hearing stories that humans were heartless creatures from a killer planet, made of bone and anger. But what they saw before them was something very different. These humans were carrying medical packs, fixing air filters, giving away their oxygen. One human even gave his suit's reserve tank to a dying Threxian worker, nearly passing out himself. Dr. Nia worked non-stop, moving between injured families and collapsing buildings. Her scanner beeped constantly. Their lungs are shutting down, she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. If we don't fix the air towers soon, they'll all suffocate. Asher was already working on that. He had found a damaged power line that led to one of the main oxygen towers. The towers are collapsing from the inside, he said through the radio. The core systems are unstable. We need to get to the central control center and restart the reactors manually. Rhea looked toward the city's center. The control tower was a tall silver spire surrounded by smoke and debris. It looked impossible to reach. How long would it take? She asked. Hours, Ashar replied. Maybe more. And the radiation levels there are too high for most species. Even with our suits, we won't last long. Rhea didn't hesitate. We'll go, she said. The Threxian commander, Valar, overheard through their open channel. His voice was sharp and full of disbelief. You cannot survive in those conditions. It's a suicide mission. Then it's a good thing we're hard to kill, Rhea replied simply, and that was the end of the argument. The crew prepared for the climb to the control tower. The ground quaked beneath them as they moved through narrow metal walkways and collapsing bridges. The once beautiful Threxian city was dying around them, buildings breaking apart, sky glowing with toxic fire. The wind howled so hard that it nearly pushed them off the platforms. But humans were used to storms. Earth had taught them to walk through hurricanes and fight against nature itself. As they advanced, Threxian civilians began to follow them, silently watching. Some of them brought water packs or small tools trying to help. They were terrified, but they followed anyway. It was the first time in history Threxians had ever walked beside humans. At one point, they reached a fallen structure blocking the path. Ashar and Jonas began cutting through it with portable plasma saws. The noise was deafening and sparks flew through the air like fireflies. When they finally cleared the way, a sudden blast of toxic gas erupted from a nearby vent. The crew barely managed to seal their suits in time. The Threxians behind them screamed and fell back. Nia ran toward them, pulling out portable oxygen masks. She didn't care that her own filter was already weakening. She just kept giving away what she had. Rhea shouted over the wind, "Move! Every second counts." When they finally reached the base of the control tower, it looked worse than anyone expected. The entrance was half buried under collapsed metal. Inside, the walls were cracked and sparks burst from broken circuits. The temperature readouts flashed dangerously high. The whole structure groaned as if it was alive and in pain. Ashar looked at the readings. We have less than an hour before the reactors blow. Then we don't waste a minute, Rhea said. They entered the tower, climbing stairwells that were twisted and half-melted. The air was thick and hazy. Through the windows, they could see the city's glowing lights fading one by one. It looked like the world itself was closing its eyes. When they reached the core room, the sound was deafening, a constant roar of machinery and unstable energy. The main control console was shattered, its circuits burnt. Ashar's hands flew over his toolkit. I can reroute the power manually, he said, his voice strained. But I'll need Nia and Lyle to stabilize the coolant flow. Rhea looked around. What do you need me to do? Ashar met her eyes. Keep us alive. Outside, the storm was getting worse. The oxygen levels were dropping rapidly. The Threxian survivors gathered around the tower, praying to whatever gods they believed in. Valar stood at the front, staring at the human ship in the distance, realizing that the people he once called monsters were now his only hope. Inside, sweat dripped down Rhea's face despite the suit's cooling system. Her visor fogged up as she helped hold cables in place while Asher rewired the core. Sparks burned her gloves, but she didn't let go. The noise was unbearable. The readings on Asher's wrist flashed red. We're out of time, he yelled. Nia's voice came through the comms, breathless. The coolant's not stable. If we restart now, the whole tower could explode. Rhea's heartbeat thundered in her chest. We don't have a choice, she said. If we don't restart, everyone out there dies. Asher hesitated only for a second before nodding. All right. On your command. Rhea took a deep breath and shouted, Do it! Ashar slammed his palm onto the restart switch. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the entire tower shook violently. Light flooded the chamber as the reactors roared back to life. The team fell to the floor, covering their faces from the heat. The control screens flashed green one by one. Outside, the effect was immediate. Across the city, the air towers came alive again, releasing clean oxygen into the atmosphere. The thick clouds began to thin, and for the first time in weeks, the Threxians saw a patch of clear sky. Cheers broke out among the survivors. They looked toward the tower, where the humans were still trapped inside, and shouted their names in gratitude. Valar fell to his knees, unable to speak. But inside the tower, the situation was not over. The temperature kept rising, and radiation alarms screamed. We need to get out, Lyle shouted. Rhea grabbed the communication line. Eidolon 9, this is Morgan. Prepare for immediate extraction, Jonas answered through static. We're on our way, Captain, but the storm's too strong. You'll have to hold out for 10 more minutes. 10 minutes felt like eternity. The heat was melting the metal floor beneath their feet. Nia's oxygen levels were critical, and Lyle was coughing heavily. Rhea pushed them toward the exit, half carrying Nia as she stumbled. Ashar stayed behind for a second, pulling the last safety lever to keep the system stable. When he turned to run, a burst of energy shot from the reactor, throwing him across the room. Ashar, Rhea screamed. She ran back, ignoring the warning alarms. The air was glowing, the walls cracking apart. She found him pinned under debris. With every bit of strength, she lifted the metal off him, her muscles trembling from exhaustion. Ashar groaned weakly but was alive. You should have left me, he said. Not a chance, Rhea replied, pulling him up. When they finally reached the exit, the ground beneath them gave way. The tower was collapsing. Rhea looked up just in time to see Eidolon 9 descending through the smoke, engines blazing. Jonas had brought the ship dangerously close to the ground. The loading ramp opened, and a blast of wind nearly knocked them down. Move! Rhea yelled, pushing her team forward. They ran as fast as they could, jumping onto the ramp just as the tower exploded behind them. The shockwave sent fire and debris flying across the sky. The ramp closed, and Eidolon 9 shot upward, barely escaping the blast. Inside the ship, everyone was silent for a long moment. The only sound was the hum of the engines and the crackle of the radio. Then Nia started to laugh softly, tears rolling down her cheeks. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. Rhea sat down heavily, breathing hard. Through the window, she could see the Threxian city glowing faintly under the morning light. The atmosphere was clearing and life was returning. Ashar looked at her and smiled weakly. You know, he said, for people who fear us, they sure owe us a drink. Rhea chuckled quietly, her eyes still on the horizon. They don't owe us anything, she said. We didn't come for thanks. We came because it was the right thing to do. Outside, the Threxians looked up at the departing ship. For the first time in their history, they didn't see Deathworlders as monsters. They saw them as heroes who had risked everything to save a world that wasn't their own. And as Eidolon 9 disappeared into the clouds, Captain Rhea didn't feel pride or victory, only relief. They had survived the storm once again, but deep inside she knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of, and nothing would ever be the same again. The storm over the Threxian city refused to die. Even after the first oxygen towers came back to life, new disasters began to rise from the ground. The ground cracked and trembled as deep explosions echoed beneath the surface. The Threxian engineers had warned that their core reactors, massive energy systems that powered the atmosphere, were breaking down. If those reactors failed completely, the entire planet would lose its breathable air forever. Inside Eidolon 9, Captain Rhea Morgan stood in the middle of the control room, staring at the holographic map of the city. 3 of the 5 oxygen towers were still unstable. Radiation was spreading from the core zone like a slow wave of death. She could see readings flashing red all across the screen. The temperature was rising faster than the planet could handle. "If the core goes," Ashar said quietly, "the atmosphere will collapse. Every living thing on this planet will die within hours." No one spoke for a moment. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Dr. Nia finally broke it. "How much time do we have?" Ashar glanced at his data pad. "Maybe 2 hours. Maybe less." Rhea took a deep breath. "Then we go back down." Jonas, the pilot, turned sharply. "Captain, no. You've already been in that radiation zone once. It's suicide to go again. Let the Threxians handle it." Rhea looked at him, her voice calm but firm. "They can't. Their engineers can't even get close to the core. Their bodies can't handle the exposure. Ours can, at least for a while. We have to go." Lyle looked at the screen showing the Threxian command center. "They won't approve it," he warned. Rhea gave a small, tired smile. "Then we won't ask for permission." Before anyone could argue, she started gathering her equipment. Nia followed her immediately. "If you're going, I'm coming," she said. Ashar grinned slightly and grabbed his toolkit. "You'll need someone to fix things, right?" Even Lyle, who was still coughing from the last mission, picked up a radiation filter pack. "Let's do what humans do best," he said. When the crew stepped onto the planet again, the wind nearly knocked them off their feet. The sky was pitch black except for flashes of blue lightning. The air smelled like burning metal. Radiation levels screamed across their scanners. But they kept moving. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the world itself was trying to hold them back. The Threxian commander Valar appeared on their comlink. His voice trembled slightly. "You can't go near the core zone. The heat will melt your ship." "We're not taking the ship," Rhea said. "We're going on foot." There was silence on the other end. When Valar spoke again, his tone was softer. "You would risk your lives for us, even after all the fear and hate we've shown you?" Rhea's answer came quietly but clearly. "We would risk our lives for anyone who calls for help." As they made their way toward the core zone, they passed through streets that looked like a nightmare. Buildings had melted from the heat. Pools of toxic water bubbled from the cracks. The sky glowed red like an open wound. But amidst the destruction, there were signs of life. Small groups of Threxians huddled in shelters, holding on to each other, watching the humans with wide eyes. Some of them reached out as they passed, touching the humans' gloved hands in silent gratitude. By the time they reached the reactor zone, the suits were beginning to overheat. Sweat ran down Rhea's face. The ground was shaking so violently that she had to grab a railing to keep her balance. Ahead of them stood the central containment tower, taller than any building they had ever seen. But its surface was cracking open, glowing with bright white energy from within. Ashar checked the readings. "The core is unstable. We need to manually restart the failsafe systems before it explodes. If we can't, this place will blow like a bomb." Nia glanced at him. "What are the chances of survival?" He didn't answer. His silence was enough. They reached the main door, but it was sealed. Lyle connected his tools to the panel and tried to hack through the system, his fingers shaking. "I can do this," he muttered. "Just a few more seconds." Sparks shot from the console and the heavy metal door slid open with a loud groan. Inside, the heat hit them like a wall. The room glowed with unstable plasma energy. Rhea moved first, stepping carefully over cracked floors and hanging wires. The noise was deafening. the sound of dying machines trying to hold themselves together. "Asher, get to the control deck," she shouted. "Nia, monitor his vitals. Lyle, reroute the cooling system from here." The team spread out, each of them moving with precision despite the chaos. Ashar began repairing the damaged circuits, his gloves burning from the heat. Lyle worked fast, trying to stabilize the power grid. "The coolant's leaking from below," he yelled. Rhea climbed down a maintenance ladder, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. She found the leak, a giant crack in the lower containment valve. Energy pulsed through it like a heartbeat. "If this valve burst," she said, "the entire core will blow." "Can you fix it?" Ashar asked. "Maybe," Rhea replied, her voice strained. She connected her toolkit and began welding the crack shut. Every spark that flew off the metal singed her suit. Her breathing grew heavier and her vision blurred from the heat. But she didn't stop. Above her, the control deck was shaking. The reactor started to roar louder, as if it was alive and angry. "Captain," Nia shouted. "Radiation spiking. You have less than 10 minutes. Rhea's hands trembled. "Almost done," she yelled back. Her tool slipped once, cutting through her glove. She felt a sharp sting as radiation burned her skin, but she ignored the pain and kept working. Finally, the crack sealed with a loud hiss. "Valve secured," she shouted. Ashar immediately pulled a lever on the main console, stabilizing power, restarting the failsafe. For a moment, nothing happened. The lights flickered. Then the core began to hum softly, its glow dimming to a steady blue. The readings on the screens turned green one by one. Outside, the Threxians saw beams of clean air rising into the sky as the oxygen systems came back online. The storms began to calm. For the first time in days, sunlight broke through the clouds. The Threxians fell to their knees, crying and cheering. They looked up at the control tower, knowing that the humans were still inside, fighting for their lives. But inside, the danger wasn't over. The energy surge that stabilized the core also damaged the escape route. Part of the floor collapsed, trapping the crew. Ashar tried to open the emergency hatch, but it was jammed. "We're stuck," he said, coughing hard. Rhea looked around desperately. There has to be another way out. She scanned the walls and found a narrow maintenance tunnel that led to the outer surface. "This way," she shouted. They crawled through the tunnel, their suits scraping against the metal walls. The air inside was hot and thin. Lyle was breathing heavily, his voice weak. "Captain, if we don't make it, at least we did something good." "You'll make it," Rhea said firmly, pulling him forward. "All of us will." They finally reached the end of the tunnel, bursting out onto a platform high above the city. The ground below glowed faintly as the planet healed itself, but Eidolon 9 was nowhere to be seen. The storm had forced it to pull back. Rhea activated her comm link. "Eidolon 9, this is Morgan." "We need pickup, now!" Jonas's voice crackled through static. "Copy that, Captain. We're coming for you. Hold your position." The ship appeared moments later, pushing through the dark clouds. It descended fast, fighting against the strong winds. The loading ramp opened, swinging dangerously in the air. The crew ran, but the platform beneath them began to crumble. Rhea pushed Nia and Lyle forward. "Go, don't look back." Ashar stumbled but managed to grab Rhea's hand just as part of the platform broke away. For a second, they were hanging over empty space. Rhea tightened her grip and pulled him up with all her strength. Together, they leapt onto the ramp as Jonas lifted the ship. The explosion came seconds later. The tower behind them erupted in a massive blast of light and dust. The shockwave slammed into Eidolon 9, shaking it violently. Alarms screamed inside the ship, but Jonas kept control, pulling them higher and higher until they were finally clear of the danger. Everyone collapsed in exhaustion. Their suits were scorched, their oxygen nearly gone, but they were alive. Nia tore off her helmet, gasping for air. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked out the window. The once black sky of the Threxian world was now blue. Rhea sat down heavily, her hands shaking. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Asher broke the silence. "You know," he said softly, "if this doesn't change how they see us, nothing ever will." Rhea smiled faintly, too tired to speak. She turned her gaze toward the horizon, where sunlight touched the clouds. The storm was over, but its memory would stay forever. Down below, the Threxians stood in silence, watching the human ship rise into the sky. For the first time in their history, they did not see Deathworlders as a threat. They saw saviors who had risked everything to protect them. And somewhere deep in their hearts, A new feeling began to grow, respect, maybe even love. The humans had done the impossible. They had faced death not with weapons but with courage, compassion, and sacrifice. And as Eidolon 9 disappeared into the bright morning sky, every Threxian knew that the word Deathworlder would never mean the same thing again. The sky above Threxia had changed forever. Where once there had been thick, dark clouds and choking air, now there was sunlight, soft, golden, and warm. It poured across the broken cities and burned plains, bringing color back to a world that had almost died. The people of Threxia stood outside their shelters, lifting their faces to the light for the first time in years. Many wept openly, some dropped to their knees in disbelief, and in the middle of it all, the ship Eidolon 9 hovered silently, watching the planet slowly come back to life. Inside the ship, the crew sat in silence. The mission was over, but the weight of everything they had endured still hung in the air. Captain Rhea Morgan leaned against the wall of the medbay, watching as Dr. Nia treated Usher's burns. His hands were badly injured from repairing the reactor, but he still managed a weak smile. "So, Captain," he said softly, "are we officially heroes now?" Rhea's lips curved into a tired grin. "I don't know if heroes feel this exhausted." Jonas, still at the pilot's seat, called over the comms. "Control tower sending a transmission. It's Commander Valar. He wants to speak to you personally." Rhea straightened, brushing the dust off her uniform. Her heart pounded slightly. She remembered how only days ago Valar had spoken to her with distrust and suspicion. To the Threxians, humans had been monsters from a violent world, a danger to the galaxy. Now they were the ones who had saved it. The screen flickered and Valar's face appeared. The proud Threxian commander looked different now. The sharpness in his eyes was gone, replaced by something gentler, humility. Behind him stood dozens of Threxian citizens, their shimmering scales reflecting the new sunlight. "Captain Morgan," Valar began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "On behalf of my people, I offer gratitude. No words are enough. You have done what we could not. You gave us back our world." Rhea shook her head. "You don't owe us anything, Commander. We just answered your call for help." Valar's gaze softened. "Perhaps, but no one else would have. When we sent that SOS, we never believed you would come. You had every reason to ignore us. You had every reason to let us fall. Yet you came anyway." Rhea glanced at her crew, who were watching quietly. "That's what humans do," she said simply. "We make mistakes, we fight. But when someone is in danger, we don't turn away." There was a pause, and then Valar bowed deeply. "You have changed us, Captain. From this day, the Threxians will remember humanity not as Deathworlders but as guardians of life." The crew exchanged quiet smiles. It was a small sentence, but it meant everything. After the transmission ended, Eidolon 9 descended slowly toward the surface. The Threxians had prepared a landing zone in the middle of the capital city, a place that had once been destroyed by storms. Now it glowed with fresh light, and hundreds of Threxians had gathered to welcome them. When the ramp opened, the humans stepped out carefully. The air was still heavy with the scent of ash and heat, but it was breathable now. Children stared at them with wide eyes, hiding behind their parents. The adults approached slowly, unsure if it was right to touch these strange beings who had once frightened them. Then one Threxian elder stepped forward. His scales shimmered with gold and blue, and his eyes were filled with tears. Without a word, he knelt before Rhea. Soon others followed. Within minutes, the entire crowd was kneeling, thousands of them bowing their heads in gratitude. Rhea froze, overwhelmed. "Please don't kneel," she said softly. "We're not gods. We just did what anyone should do." The elder raised his head. "You may not be gods," he said, "but you showed mercy like one. You saved our children. You saved our future." Nia wiped her eyes, trying to hide the tears. Lyle stood next to her, his face pale but proud. "You know," he said quietly, "I never thought I'd see the day aliens bowed to humans." Usher chuckled weakly. "Yeah, and I never thought I'd be okay with it." Rhea smiled faintly, her heart swelling with emotion. For so long, humanity had been seen as dangerous, violent, untrustworthy. Now in this moment, that image was being rewritten, not by words but by action. The Threxians led them to the central square, where a great monument was being rebuilt from the ruins. It had once been a statue of Threxia's greatest scientist, but now the people had carved something new beside it. A sculpture of 5 humans standing together, holding out a light toward the sky. At the base of the statue were words written in both languages. They came when no one else would. Rhea stood in front of it speechless. She could feel the warmth of the sunlight on her face, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to truly smile. That night, a great ceremony took place. The Threxians lit blue fire crystals across the city, each flame representing a life saved. Music filled the air, soft and strange but beautiful. The humans sat among the crowd, eating the food they were offered, laughing with the people they had once feared. Nia found herself surrounded by Threxian children, who touched her hands curiously and asked endless questions about Earth. Jonas told stories of human oceans and forests. Lyle played a recording of old Earth songs, and soon the plaza was full of both species dancing under the stars. But amid the celebration, Rhea slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. She looked at the stars, now clear and bright above Threxia's atmosphere. She thought of all the lives lost in past wars, all the misunderstandings that had built a wall between species. Maybe this was the start of breaking that wall down. Ashar found her there carrying 2 cups of glowing Threxian drink. He handed one to her and leaned against the railing. "You think they'll really see us differently now?" he asked. Rhea took a sip. The drink tasted sharp but sweet. "I think some of them already do," she said. "The rest will take time. Change always does." Ashar nodded thoughtfully. "Still not bad for a bunch of Deathworlders, huh?" Rhea laughed softly. "Yeah, not bad at all." Far below, she could see Threxian children chasing each other around the plaza, waving tiny holographic lights shaped like stars. The humans' faces were reflected in the glowing blue fires. For the first time in her life, Rhea felt a deep sense of peace. As dawn approached, the horizon turned pink and gold. Idle and Nine stood ready for departure. The crew had been offered a permanent place among the Threxians, but Rhea had already decided they couldn't stay. There were other signals out there, other cries for help waiting to be heard. Humanity's duty wasn't finished yet. When they prepared to leave, Valar came to see them off. He placed a small crystal in Rhea's hand, a Threxian relic glowing with soft blue light. "A symbol of trust," he said. "Keep it, so you never forget that even those who fear you may one day call you friends." Rhea nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you, Commander. We won't forget." As Eidolon 9 rose from the planet's surface, the Threxians waved from below. Their voices echoed through the comms, chanting a single word in unison: humanity. The sound followed them into the sky until it faded into silence. Inside the ship, the crew sat quietly, each lost in their thoughts. Nia looked out the window. "You think anyone back home will believe what we did?" she asked. Lyle chuckled. "Probably not, but that's okay. We know the truth." Rhea gazed out at the endless stars. Somewhere far away, another world might be crying for help. She could almost hear the faint pulse of a distress signal through the ship's sensors. Jonas glanced at her from the pilot's seat. "New signal, Captain?" Rhea smiled faintly. "Maybe, let's find out." Ashar leaned forward. "Even after everything, you're ready for another mission?" Rhea looked at her crew, the people who had risked everything beside her, who had turned fear into faith and hate into hope. "Always," she said quietly. The engines roared to life, and Eidolon 9 rose higher, breaking through the atmosphere. Below them, Threxia shone like a jewel, alive and bright once more. The sunlight reflected off its rivers and towers, and for a brief moment, the planet looked like a mirror, showing the best of what both species could become. As the stars swallowed the ship, the message that had once started it all echoed once more across the galaxy. A simple SOS, carried on waves of light. But this time everyone who heard it knew that humanity would answer. Because they were the Deathworlders, strong, fearless, and full of heart. And when someone called for help, no matter how far, they would always come.